Merry Christmas wanted to get a movie review out in time for Christmas, and I want to talk about Joyeux Noel or Merry Christmas, a movie about the 1914 Christmas truce of the First World War that took place in the first year. A great movie that's really emotional, even if it does have inaccuracies, but this is more in line with historical fiction, and as such, I'm willing to overlook the inaccuracies. Like, one character's wife is there with him at the trench. A wife wouldn't have been allowed within 100 miles of the trenches. But it's still good. It focuses on the Scottish, the French, and the German. The beginning scene is really well done. It's German, French, and Scottish kids spewing wartime propaganda in classrooms, and it shows what this propaganda does. And, like, you have kids basically arguing for genocide. And then the film begins with in a church, and there's two brothers. One comes rushing in. War's been declared. We're finally going to leave this town, and he's all happy. And the priest, you can tell by the look on his face, he's probably been through war before. And he knows even if those two kids are lucky enough to get out alive, they're gonna be forever changed. One of the brothers dies, and I believe it's in an Allied offensive that happened historically on December 19th, and it was an attempt to boost morale, and all it did was cost lives on both sides. One thing this film does really well is we get to spend time with people from the different sides. We get to spend time with the French. We get to spend time with the Scottish. We get to spend time with the German. Our main German character is an opera singer, and it comes into play later. And we just go through the paces leading up to Christmas. We see just the disconnect between the backline officers and the men at the front. Like the priest who becomes a medic, he goes on to no man's land at night to drag a wounded soldier back, and another soldier comes on and gets shot, and he gets disciplined for it, even though, let's ignore the fact no one told that other soldier to hop out, and he probably could have gotten the wounded soldier back with little to no incident had that other guy not popped out. We get to where, and again, this wouldn't have happened, but the opera singer's wife is at the trenches, and on the Scottish side, but in history, the singing started on the German side. The priest just starts playing a song on the bagpipes, and they start singing, and the tune is really important because it comes into play later. And then, after that, the German opera singer, someone has a harmonica and starts playing Silent Night, and the German opera singer starts playing it, and I love this scene. After a little bit of the song, the Scottish guy starts playing the bagpipes, and there's a moment with this look on the opera singer's face that's just amazing action. And after the song, the guy on the bagpipes, he plays the first few bars of "O Come All Ye Faithful." And at this point, the opera singer had stood up out of the trenches, and he actually grabs a Christmas tree and walks out into the middle of the trenches, and they meet and agree to a tentative ceasefire. and they exchange like chocolates and wine and stuff like that. And we get to see just what these are just young men forced to fight because of politics. Like this here, this is a sketch from a book, but that's basically what happened in the movie. And what's nice, it doesn't overly romanticize the truce. It so shows the after effects, but it also shows what it was like being in the war at Christmas time. This was the first modern war. Like, wars were completely different before this one, and no one was prepared for the scope of this war. No one was prepared for how grueling it was. No one was prepared to be living in the ground in mud and water, let alone at Christmas time, which they thought the war would have been over by. And there's even a line where I think it was the German asks about a ceasefire for Christmas, and someone says, the war's not going to be decided tonight. I don't think anyone's going to look bad at us if we lay our guns aside for one night. And it's just a nice movie. The next day, they actually bury the dead. And look, in the book, there's an actual picture of the event, intermingled Allied and German soldiers. And there's actually a journal entry about the Christmas truce, and it was by someone who lived it, and he talked about them burying the soldiers, and it was, I'm trying to think, it was German, it was a group of German and Scottish. They buried a French soldier and had a funeral for him, and the soldier wrote in his journal something to the extent of, it was quite a sight to behold and one not easily forgotten, both German and Scottish paying respects to the French dead. So look, back then it actually even occurred, it was big news, it made the paper. And it was great. It was emotional to see this. The Christmas Eve scene was beautifully done, beautifully shot, beautifully edited. It was absolute perfection. I think it's also a nice touch that this movie's in 3 languages. The Scottish are always speaking English, the French are always speaking French, and the German are speaking German, which adds to the authenticity, but it also shows the aftermath of this truce and how units had to be broken up and scattered around and how people were disciplined. Like the Scottish priest, he gets reprimanded, pulled to the back lines, and even whatever the priest is that's over him comes and ridicules and belittles him, and then gives a sermon to the soldiers, basically arguing for genociding the Germans. And this scene, I didn't take it as the priest walking away from his faith in God, but he has a cross and he takes it and hangs it up and walks away. And I kind of take that as, yeah, I'm keeping my faith, but I'm no longer a part of the Catholic Church. And perhaps my favorite and arguably the most moving scene, there were a group of Germans that were disciplined and being shipped off in a train, and the officer yelling at them grabs the harmonica the guy was playing and throws it on the ground and smashes it, and he slams the door, and that same German soldier, he then goes to humming the first song they heard the Scottish playing, and everyone in the train joins in on that. And you just see outside of the train kind of this disgusted, aggravated look on the officer's face. And I like that. It's like the scene in Shawshank Redemption after Andy played the record and they threw him in solitary, and he's like, easiest time I ever did. I had the music to keep me company, and they're like, there's no way they let you drag that record player in there. He's like, no, it's up here and it's in here. That's the beauty of music. They can't take that away from you. And he took the guy's harmonica, destroyed it, but he wasn't able to take away the power of the music to help him find escape from his circumstances and hope in small little moments. This film does a great job showing the disconnect between the men fighting the war and the men behind the lines leading the war, and how this war was just a political mess that shouldn't have happened. It really hammers home how and why World War One was so tragic. A lot of historians, not literally but philosophically, like to say the 20th century actually began in 1914. The Western Front is the fault line of the 20th century, and more specifically, the Christmastruce is the fault line of World War One. It was the real before and after moment, because even though at this point war looked very different than it used to be, it was still fairly similar. By this time next year, the war would be completely unrecognizable. There were tanks, chemical weapons were being used, men were being slaughtered in droves more and more. And this was just a snapshot, one moment in time before the world really and truly changed. And it's a great Christmas story. It's a real life Christmas miracle that this even happened in the first place, despite its inaccuracies. I'm going to give this A minus. It does have some pacing issues. It feels like it drags a little leading up to the truce, but overall, this is a phenomenal movie. I can't recommend highly enough, especially at this time of year. You can rent it on YouTube if you want, so check it out, and Merry Christmas. Have fun with your friends and family. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Over and out.